Good morning, fam. So this morning, my readings in the Gospels was Jesus teaching in parables, and to the disciples, the greater number of disciples, referring to like everybody that was following him. These people that would come um, to see his miracles and to hear his teaching and that sort of thing. And in so I was reading in Matthew, Mark, and John. Matthew, Luke, and John. I don't know. I forget already. Mark, it's still open. Matthew, Mark, and John. And Jesus is saying, because he's teaching in parables, he's saying these things that, again, if you think of it in terms of literal, it just doesn't make sense, right? And that's where you get where he says, like, um, talking about, like, if you eat me, if you drink my blood, that sort of thing. And of course people are going to think, if he's talking literally, this guy's crazy. And so many of them, John tells us, left. And that's when Jesus turned to the 12 and said, well, are you going to leave too? And then, of course, as we know, Peter responds, Lord, to who else can we turn? You alone have the words of eternal life. And that must have been, I think, just, I don't know what the right word is, but a blessing to Jesus's ears to hear that. Because previously, he was talking about, he quoted from Isaiah 29, where he says, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain they worship me, because let me find it here. In vain they worship me, because teaching as doctrines the commands of men. And then in Isaiah 29, he gets in there and talking about how that the Pharisees made all of these things, and they memorized things by rote, and they said had all of these spiritual activities that they were doing. And the prophet Isaiah saying, you're worshiping God in vain with all of this rote repetition and all this kind of stuff. Sorry for all the lights, it's distracting. I got this light in front of me. And Jesus then repeats the same thing to these people at his time. And so coming off of that, and coming off of then people leaving, and then turning to the 12, and Peter says that, and then Jesus finishes it up by saying that, yes, but even one of you will deceive me, or not deceive me, will betray me. And so just an incredible time in the Word this morning, just seeing that movement of conversation through Jesus, talking about comparing them to the Pharisees, going back to Isaiah 29, how they worship him in vain, rote repetition, and all of this kind of stuff. To teaching in the parables, saying things that people didn't understand, and so they left, and then turning to the 12 and saying, are you guys taking off too? And they stay. And then, so, I don't know, I guess my takeaway, other than all of that, was just the fact that even at this time, at this point in the ministry, the disciples are still trying to figure all this out. The things that Jesus was saying was still kind of confusing to him, and yet they just trusted him. They had a simple faith like children, and just believed in him, that you're God, you have the words of eternal life. I don't always understand what you're saying or get it, but I'm following you. And a lot of times we need to do the same.